Zulu wasn't just a rip-roaring war epic. It was a thunderous collision of history, myth, and raw filmmaking chaos. Today, I'm taking you backstage through 20 weird facts about Zulu. And stay tuned, one bonus fact at the end will blow away everything you thought you understood. Ready? Then strap your kit, steady your nerves, let's march. Fact number 1. What audiences didn't know: the terrain in the film is not historically accurate. It wasn't the gentle rolling hill of Rorke's Drift. It was a brutal amphitheater of rock. The production recreated the mission station and hospital set beneath the massive natural amphitheater in the Drakensberg Mountains, far steeper and more dramatic than the real location of the battle. This meant the actors and extras were filming on terrain that constantly challenged the cameraman's dolly tracks, the lighting rigs, the horse units. It wasn't just a story that became epic, it became physically punishing. In the face of that punishing set, the crew canceled a few days, equipment slipped, morale wavered. This remarkable setting elevated the imagery, but also cost sweat, nerves, and nearly a lost schedule. In short, not gentle background, but a full-on nature obstacle course, and the film looks more heroic because the location itself did the heavy lifting. Fact number 2. What audiences didn't know: the extras playing the Zulu warriors were real Zulus and paid. It wasn't fictional casting, it was active cultural collaboration. Some 240 Zulu extras were bussed in from tribal homes more than 100 miles away. A further about 1,000 tribesmen were filmed by the 2nd Unit in Zululand. Yet there's a myth. Because of apartheid-era laws, some claimed none of the Zulu extras were paid and were instead given cattle. That turned out to be incorrect. The Zulu extras were paid modestly, but the myth lingered. What this means: on one level, the film boasts authenticity. On another level, it navigated a minefield of social and racial realities in South Africa of the 1960s. Many extras were witnessing their own heritage reinterpreted and yet being paid to reenact it. This convergence of art, lived experience, and commercial filmmaking gives the film attention no one on the surface would expect. Fact number 3. What audiences didn't know: the lead actor for Lieutenant Gonville Bromhead, Michael Caine, got the role despite what he calls the worst screen test I had ever seen. It wasn't a confident audition, it was a desperate casting decision. The production was about to depart for South Africa, and they needed someone quickly. Caine later said that had an English director cast him, he never would have been made an officer because of his Cockney roots. So the film wasn't just the launching pad for an icon, it was almost a gamble. Caine, hours earlier, thought he might be heading home. Instead, he found himself in the uniform, in scenes fighting the Zulu. Charge, on a set far more challenging than the average studio lot. That uncertainty looms behind his performance and gives it an edge. This actor is under real pressure, both on screen and off. Fact number 4. What audiences didn't know: the weapons weren't fully authentic. It wasn't pure Martini Henry rifles everywhere. It was a mix. The production lacked enough of the historic Martini Henry rifles for all extras, so many British soldiers' extras and even some leading characters used later Lee Enfield rifles, noticeably with a moving bolt on the side. When you watch the battle scenes carefully, you'll glimpse raised bolts. That detail betrays the compromises behind the practical effects. The producers faced: do we film with fewer extras because we don't have the right rifles? Or do we film with the wrong rifles and hope no one notices? They chose the latter, and the choice speaks to the scale of the production. This small but telling detail reminds us, epic war movies may feel seamless, but they're built on pragmatic decisions, cutting corners, and sheer logistical grind. Even the heroic volley you admire hides a bolt glinting in the sun. Fact number 5. What audiences didn't know: the portrayal of Private Henry Hook, played by James Booth, is fiercely fictionalized, and his family was scandalized. The film shows Hook as a coward, a thief, a malingerer who redeems himself at the hospital. But historically, he was a model soldier, a teetotaler, assigned specifically to guard the hospital, not a down-and-out malingerer. His daughters reportedly walked out of the London premiere in protest at how their father was portrayed. So the movie wasn't just war drama, it was rewriting reputations. In crafting a dramatic arc, Hook's redemption, the production sacrificed historical truth. That may not hurt the spectacle, but it changes the meaning and represents a tension between cinematic character building and real-life heroism. It leaves a darker question. When we cheer Hook on screen, are we cheering the man he was, or the man the screenwriters made him out to be? Fact number 6. What audiences didn't know, the production almost didn't secure the right format for its ambition. It wasn't filmed in a standard 35mm ratio. It was shot in Super Technirama 70, a high-end widescreen process meant for 70mm exhibition. Yet in the UK, the film's general release was 35mm. Due to British film quota regulations, films shown in 70mm didn't count toward the quota. That meant something built to feel vast and cinematic was, for many audiences, delivered in a format that restricted its intended visual impact. The film looks massive anyway, but behind the scenes, the financiers and the distributors were wrestling format laws, quotas, and cost constraints. It wasn't just about telling a story, it was about fitting the story into a commercial regulatory framework. This adds a layer. The grandeur you see on screen came at a cost of compromise behind the lens. Fact number 7. What audiences didn't know, the film stirred political tensions in South Africa. It wasn't simply a war movie, it was a cultural thorn. When it was released in South Africa in 1964, the apartheid government banned it for black audiences, fearing the scenes of black warriors defeating white soldiers might incite unrest. The ban meant screenings were limited and segregated, even though the film was made there with local Zulu extras. The very soil that hosted the visuals also hosted broad societal conflicts. So while on screen you see mutual respect between British and Zulu, off-screen you see a nation still locked in racial divisions. That contradiction gives the film deeper resonance. It wasn't just a heroic retelling, it was an uneasy participation in history, on location, in the era of segregation. Fact number 8. What audiences didn't know, the lead producer star, Stanley Baker, walked into a career gamble. It wasn't simply an actor in front role, it was him building a production company, Diamond Films, and using this film to launch bigger ambitions. He approached executive producer Joseph E. Levine with a script and budget after making Sodom and Gomorrah and got Levine on board. The near final cost came in at about $666,554 $1.72 million, significantly below some media-promoted estimates. That meant Baker was investing his reputation, his finances, and his future in this story of a little-known battle. The film's success thus wasn't just box office, it helped shape Baker's trajectory. And when it worked, it validated a model of actor-producer as serious cinematic architect. That dimension often slips unnoticed when we just watch the finished product. Fact number 9. What audiences didn't know, the filming conditions were far harsher than you'd imagine. It wasn't a comfortable UK set. It was African heat, dust, logistics of hundreds of extras, horses, oxen, a constructed concession village, and catering facility. The modern compound built to housecast, crew, stores, horses, oxen, and catering had to function like a mobile village. The set fills alone taxed resources. Crew members recall coping with extreme sun, sudden storms, and the enormous weight of the Super Technirama camera rigs in the Veld. This isn't just trivia, it shapes performance, morale, continuity. When you see the men wind-blown on screen, maybe what you're seeing is the real fatigue of the shoot. The film isn't simply finished work, it carries the scars of production. Fact number 10. What audiences didn't know, the film's historical accuracy is deeply compromised in places. It wasn't a documentary, it was a dramatized mythmaker. For example, the regiment is portrayed as mostly Welsh, and the song Men of Harlech, sung before battle. But historically at Rorke's Drift, the 24th Regiment had only 32 Welsh out of around 150 defenders. The song was not yet their tune. Characters are altered. 2. The real Private Hook was a model soldier, not the drunken rogue the film depicts. The depiction of the native contingent is also inverted. In reality, many were black African auxiliaries. The film simplifies them, so when you cheer the on-screen heroics, know this: the film constructs a myth for narrative power rather than strict accuracy. That isn't bad, it's storytelling, but it means the legacy is shaped by choices behind the camera, not just events in the field. Fact number 11. What audiences didn't know, the battle sequence staging created real danger. It wasn't simulated carnage, it was real sweat, real injuries. The masked extras, the descending charge of the Zulus, the horses, the pyrotechnics, these were practical effects under rough terrain, not CGI. Crew recollect equipment slipping, horses shying, camera operators lunging backwards to avoid real riders. The terrain's steepness made movement dicey. One extra collapsed from heat exhaustion. Another crew member nearly lost a camera as its rig gave way on the slope. It wasn't merely choreographed danger, it was borderline real, and that scale, that risk, translates to what you see on screen: the tension, the dragging breath, the sense of overwhelming odds. That realism lurks in the blur of helmets and spears. Fact number 12. What audiences didn't know: the Zulu chief in the film is played by a significant political figure. It wasn't a generic actor in costume. It was Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the real-life Zulu leader, playing King Cetshwayo, his great-grandfather, on screen. This casting choice adds layers. On screen, he commands respect. On screen, the Zulu warriors carry dignity. Off-screen, the battle evokes colonial history, Zulu identity, reconciliation in portrayal. But there's tension. A film made in apartheid-era South Africa, with a black Zulu warrior king portrayed by a man who would become a political leader. This is more than casting. It's a cultural moment. It wasn't simply a war epic. It became part of a larger story of representation and identity. Fact number 13. What audiences didn't know: the film's success rewrote the battle's place in history. It wasn't just a small skirmish. The original Battle of Rorke's Drift was a relatively minor moment in the 1879 Anglo-Zulu War, but the film transformed it into legendary status. Because of the movie, Rorke's Drift became a symbol of heroic defense against overwhelming odds in British popular culture. It influenced war films, literature, even toy soldiers. Yes, there were toy soldiers based on Zulu. So when you watch Zulu, you watch more than a battle drama. You watch how films shape collective memory. The behind-the-scenes drama isn't just on set, it's in how the film rewrote history for generations. Fact number 14. What audiences didn't know: the composer of the score, John Barry, turned the film into a cultural brand. It wasn't just background music, it became a chart release. He included on the album the track Zulu Stamp, and even a dance choreography called the Zulu Stamp, arranged by choreographer Lionel Blair. That means the film's influence jumped from screen into clubs, records, merchandise. The war epic resonated beyond cinema seats, it reached record racks. That crossover rarely happens in serious war dramas. It shows how the film's production decided to think big, not just in battle sequences, but in cultural footprint. Fact number 15. What audiences didn't know: the stunt team and extras had minimal sets of safety protocols. It wasn't a fully protected shoot. Some horse riders carried out charges on slopes, sparks from flamethrower effects drifted into dry grass, and sleeping arrangements were basic. A number of horses were exhausted, and one collapsed during the filming of the hospital assault scene under the blaze of nightlights and real smoke. While no major fatalities are recorded in the public record, crew recollections describe shrieking horses, sweat streaming down faces in the spotlight fog, and rushing for cover when the flame charge caught the wind wrong. This layer of danger gives the film a pulse. The risk of what's off-screen: exhausted animals, overheating crew, unsteady slopes, is part of the real story of how the movie got made. Fact number 16. What audiences didn't know: the mission station set had to be moved and rebuilt multiple times. It wasn't a single set that held. The original site near the Tugela River proved too low-lying and prone to sudden storms. The ambient light and dust patterns didn't match the director's vision of harsh, arid confrontation. So the crew rebuilt the station under the amphitheater. They shifted materials, re-erected wagons, crates, sacks of maize meal as battlements. The call sheets changed at a moment's notice as weather disrupted plans. This moving of the set meant budget and scheduling pressure. Behind the finished film, you see the tension of, "We'll move it again tomorrow." That behind-the-scenes chaos adds texture to the final product. Your immersion works because the makers risked wrecking the schedule for it. Fact number 17. What audiences didn't know: the film's success made it a training template for future war films. It wasn't just a singular epic, it became a blueprint. The famed sequence in The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. The Helm's Deep Assault is said to have been deliberately styled in homage to Zulu. Director Peter Jackson cited the layering of thousands of extras, the mixed terrain, the volley fire sequences as influences. So the behind-the-scenes of Zulu didn't stay behind the scenes, it radiated outwards, altering how large-scale battle cinema is done. The risk, the scale, the practical effects, they became lessons. The film set wasn't just a filming ground, it became a classroom. Fact number 18. What Audiences Didn't Know. A piece of memorabilia from the film carries a strange twist. It wasn't just a prop. Stanley Baker purchased what he believed was a replica Victoria Cross VC medal awarded in the actual battle, but after his death, it turned out to be genuine. That means the film inadvertently triggered a real-life collector's controversy, historical investigation, and a reminder that the boundary between this film world and real history is permeable. The movie used replicas and dramatization, but the layers behind the film include real medals, real heroism, real estates. That fact hovers like an echo behind the story. Fact number 19. What Audiences Didn't Know. In many local villages around the filming location, the production created temporary trading economies. It wasn't just cast and crew that traveled. Local villagers provided extras, transport, livestock, catering. Some built stores and houses for the filming village. This meant local economies spiked and also social dynamics shifted. Men away from their home communities for weeks, money changing hands, cattle being used in support roles, sets built on tribal lands. This ripple effect seldom appears in the credits, but the production was as much social infrastructure as cinematic spectacle. So the behind the scenes is about more than lights and cameras, it's about societies in motion. Fact number 20. What Audiences Didn't Know. The legacy of Zulu rests not just on its box office, but on how audiences responded to the other side. It wasn't simply British heroes versus Zulu attackers. The filmmakers included nuance. The Zulu warriors were portrayed with dignity, led by a real Zulu king figure, and the film's closing narration acknowledged their bravery. This portrayal, in an era when colonial war films often demonized the natives, gave the film broader resonance, especially among black audiences. For instance, hip-hop pioneer Afrika Bambaataa later said he chose the name Zulu for his organization because of inspiration from the film's images of black solidarity. And yet, the production happened in a segregated society, made with paid Zulu extras but screened under apartheid restrictions. That contradiction gives the film its lasting weirdness, heroic and flawed, celebrated and compromised. The behind-the-scenes story matches that complexity. Bonus fact. Here's the one secret even hardcore fans rarely know. During the editing of the film, the producer Stanley Baker insisted on cutting a scene that showed the British cavalry retreat earlier, a historically accurate moment that undermined the defense of the drift myth. That scene exists only in deleted footage now archived and seldom shown. The film you know isn't what was originally shot. It wasn't just cut for length. It was removed to preserve a heroic narrative. In effect, Zulu's legend was boosted inside the editing room. That means the version of the battle you see on screen is heavily sculpted not by the events themselves, but by the editors who decided what the myth should show. So there you have it, 20 weird, wild, and shadow-filled facts about Zulu. From location crises to myth-making, from cultural tensions to hidden truths, this film was far more than its screen spectacle. It was a production that survived weather, politics, budgets, and history itself. It wasn't just about the defense of Rorke's Drift, it was about filmmaking under real-world pressure. If you found this backstage journey revealing, go ahead and like and subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive, and leave a comment telling me which fact shocked you most. Because Zulu didn't just dramatize a battle, it re-engineered an epic. Until next time, keep your chin high, your rifles ready, and remember, once the cameras stop, the real story begins.